Hello, I'm Robert, a fact checker and science blogger, and help people scared of many things. And this time, it's about the statues that are being pulled down or sometimes even damaged in the US and the UK. So I just want to reassure people who are scared and they think, almost like the world's coming to an end because some statues are being destroyed. This is absolutely normal. In fact, we are in a very unusual time in history that we don't have people demolishing statues all the time. So, back in 1776 was the first big statue in the United States that was demolished, and this was a statue after 5 days after independence, Declaration of Independence. Then they tore down a statue of the current King of Britain, King George III, and they made it into musket balls. So that would be the first one then. And then here's, I've got to say here, history is full of demolished statues. It's almost a miracle there are any left. And also, there just isn't room for all the statues if we were to keep everything. Most of them are in museums. And I think an analogy, it's a bit like if you've got a bookshelf, then you have some books that you really like people to see. You sort of put this up on, and maybe even open them up and show the images inside or something like that. Or you have some ornaments and you put them out in your living room or something like that. Then that's what the statues in our cities are like. They're things we decide to put on display. And there have been huge destructions of statues and things in the past. This is in the 16th century, Dissolution of monarchy, when it was during the Reformation, and when it started Protestantism, and they had the idea that the Roman Catholics were using too many images and all the fancy stained glass and something, and so on. And so they just went around and they knocked out all the windows. That chap's probably knocking stained glass out of the windows. If you go around the United Kingdom, you'll find that many of the oldest churches have plain glass instead of stained glass. And that goes back, originally it was stained glass, but they just knocked it all out in the 16th century. And they knocked down loads and loads of statues back then, of course, and destroyed the dissolution of the monasteries, and the monastery just destroyed. Many of the ancient monasteries were destroyed. This is one of them, Glastonbury Abbey. And this is the biggest, the Colossus of Rhodes, which was the biggest statue in ancient times. It was about the same size as the Statue of Liberty. The artist there, you almost think it might have got some of the inspiration from the Statue of Liberty. But anyway, that's a statue about the size of the Statue of Liberty. It was one of the 7 wonders of the world that they'd actually made a statue so big. And that's gone, but that went in an earthquake. And this is another example of an ancient statue, the fallen statue of King Ramesses II. And they used to think mistakenly it was a mythical king called Ozymandias. And then this is the famous Shelleys Poem. I met a traveller from an ancient land who said, "To vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that a sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear: My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away." So that's about how you have these ancient, this entire civilization with a big city, probably, and this statue of this king. And all that's left is the 2 trunks of the legs of stone, and then next to it, this separate from it, there's the head just lying in scattered in the desert. You imagine it as just having nothing to it, just the head, not even any body. And you can see the expression on the face. And that's the fate of all statues, and nearly all statues in history. The ones that we have left are the very, very few that survived. It's not just being demolished like that. Also, you'd have like you have a new prime minister or something. In the old days, new king or something, someone invade somewhere, or someone, just they would just take down the old statues and melt them and make them into new statues of new people, or they'd make them into musket balls or something, or into cannonballs. If you go back before the age of muskets, they just didn't have the idea that we need to preserve statues. That's a very modern idea. And so now's the whole thing. Why in the United States? Why are they taking down the statues of Columbus? Because you think of him normally as being a really good chap. He sailed across, found the Americas, till you get the kind of American perspective of the Native Americans, and especially when you realise what he did to the indigenous people. Now, a lot of people share this book by a Spanish friar, I forget his name, short account of the destruction of the Indies, and it is very gruesome. I don't recommend reading it. Spanish friar, do I put his name? I tend to. By Bartolomeu de la Casas. Something I never tried to do this native language kind of pronunciation, just English, Casas, whatever you say in the native language. I have no idea, I don't have a clue. But these are the people, so the Taino, many of our words come from them. Not that many, but when you talk about a canoe, or hurricane, or tobacco, or barbecue, or hammock, then those are words from the ancient Taino people. And these people, so what we do know is that the Spaniards took the men from the villages and set them working in the gold mines, in their plantations. And they couldn't grow enough food for their families, so their families starved. And then they got smallpox and measles. And some committed suicide, and some tried to fight the Spaniards and died. And others fled to regions the Spaniards hadn't colonized yet. And eventually, they didn't really completely die out. It's more that they became intermingled with the Spaniards, some of them took 10 wives, and they become the current Puerto Ricans. Some of them are distinguished, are descended from these tiny people. So, and then this fire, he saw what was going on, and he was very upset about it. He was actually involved in it until he decided to become a Dominican friar, and then his conscience was just against it. And then he went and tried to persuade the Spanish king at the time, so he's one of the first people to stand up for indigenous rights, and he wrote this book. But this book he wrote was a polemic to try and persuade the Spanish king to be more careful and to respect the rights of indigenous people in Spain. Obviously his effects were rather limited, but he did do, and so if you read this book, it's very gruesome what he says the Spanish did. But you've got to remember that he is using hyperbole. He is trying to persuade this king with pathos, so he's making it seem very, very gruesome and horrid. And you don't need to take everything as word for word. That's what the Spaniards did. They obviously did these things, and that's from a much more reputable site, the Smithsonian, and they've done a reasonable summary of what they did. And they've got Columbus's own description of them, that they were very generous people who exchanged things, even for bits of broken crockery. They would give everything they have out of generosity. And then he says they should be good servants. So that's his summary of them. So you can get his attitude from that. So it's no wonder that there is some feeling about this. And so it's a little bit like again, as I said, it's like you've got the books on your bookshelf, and you've got some things written where you've got your history of the world, whatever, and you've got these things that you might want to put on display in your cities, and they're kind of telling a message of what you are, what your country is all about. So the Statue of Liberty is proudly on display in the United States in a very prominent position. So the question really is, should statues of Christopher Columbus be so proudly on display in the same way? And some people are saying that they should, some are saying they shouldn't. And the feelings are very strong. Other people who say they shouldn't, or less so, less often, not make such a big thing of him. Now this one, this has had the head removed. Then what the news stories don't say so much is that this statue has had its head removed 3 times. This is the 3rd time its head has been removed. So this is an example of how even quite recently statues being damaged is nothing new. And this head was, you see this little pin where a new head had to be fastened on before and before and before. Originally it probably wouldn't have had a pin, it would just have had a solid sculpture of rock, of stone, but they had to put a pin in to fasten a new head on. And so they'll put another head on, but they might put it in a museum. So, and in the United States, in the United Kingdom, then we have a similar thing. This was taken down legally. So it is definitely illegal in a riot to pull down a statue. There's no doubt about that. These people will get sentenced, and they, what might happen, probably fines or something. Not sure how strong an offence it is, but but this is a slave trader, and his statue was taken down legally in the United Kingdom. Then the mayor of London is taking down statues of slave traders, and that's perfectly okay, perfectly fine and normal and ordinary thing to do. You decide this is not really where we're at. We don't think the statues of slave traders are the things we should be putting prominently in our cities. So some people have decided that, so they're taking them down. No, sorry, he wasn't a slave trader, sorry. No, he wasn't a slave trader. This chap was just a plantation owner. He owned a plantation, and I've got to correct that, I got that wrong. So he owned a plantation and I've got to take down, he's not a slave trader, he's a plantation owner. And in his plantation he had many slaves. And also just to say that even if you're not taking the stonework down deliberately, the stonework is constantly being remade and rebuilt, because stones on public display get eroded by the weather, and so especially if it's many centuries old, then you have to rebuild it, you have to re-sculpt the thing if it's a soft rock. And so this is the York Minster example. They made new grotesques, and this is a completely modern one. They didn't have the original in sufficient state of repair to be able to copy it, so they put new ones up. There's another one. There's another thing is that we have these statues that we have taken from other countries around the world, and they sometimes, quite rightly, want them back again. This is one of our ones from Easter Island, and they want it back. So, do I have anything else in here? I think that's about it. Oh yes, and what do we replace them by? And this is a rather amusing, I'm not sure. I should change that as well. I'll just see if I can find it. No, I think. Here we are. I've got to copy that over into that thing because for some reason the tweet hasn't gone over properly. Yes, apparently they say we've got more statues of goats than we have of black women in the United Kingdom. They found 7 statues of goats, of named black women. and they've only found 3 statues of named black women. And so that would seem to, and I found a fact check as well, came to a similar conclusion. Yes, there we are. So it seems quite reasonable to suggest, we've got things that we want to put things on display. Let's have some more statues of famous black women on display in the place of these statues of famous slave owners. And why not? There are many famous black women. Why not put some of their statues up? Anyway, so I'll leave that. That's the end. So So I'm not saying anything about whether it was right, whether we should do this, but we could do. And there's absolutely nothing wrong. I'm just saying this. I not really want to make a point of view on this, to say, oh, we definitely should do this or that. But just so it's a perfectly reasonable conversation to have. Should we replace the statues of slave owners with statues of... I seem to have missed out. No, I did a big edit of this that has now been lost. That's why I'm missing so much. Oh, that's a shame. Anyway, I'll upload this. My big edit also had a section about the Rhodes scholars and things like that. It doesn't really matter. I don't think we really need it. Anyway, I'll upload this.